I thought I could run away from my past. I really wanted to run away from the memory of my father, drunk and screaming and punching his rage and shame into the bodies of his children. And I really wanted to run away from the memory of the nights of my father when I had to hold my breath and my mind and my spirit separated from my body. And I saved myself by pretending this was all just a bad dream. Nothing was really happening. And when I was 18, I did run away. I ran away to college, and I really believed that if I just ran far enough and fast enough, I could leave that past behind me. But you know what? It doesn't work like that. 6 years and 2 college degrees later, that past caught up with me and it ran me over. And it happened like this. My best friend Denise and I were visiting my mother. My mother was telling stories of my father. Oh my God, with every story she told, a panic started growing and growing in me until I felt like I was in a haunted house and those monsters were about to break the walls down and they were going to kill me. And this fear grew so big that I had to leave the room. I just went into my old bedroom and I sat down on the bed and I started crying, remembering being in a basement in Alaska with my father, swearing, I won't tell Daddy, I promise. Now, when I was finally able to pull myself together and go back out into the living room with Denise and my mother, I sat down and I started drinking coffee and I was talking to my mama just like we were having a beautiful evening. And my mama, she went right along with me. Not one mention of me being in another room and crying, because you know what? We were trained up in a life of ignoring, denying, not looking. Absolutely, under no circumstances do you really tell the truth of what's happening. Now, Denise, on the other hand, was pretty clear that something was wrong. So when we were driving home that night, she said, "What happened in there? Why were you crying?" And I didn't have an answer. Denise, that night, stood as my first witness. She said, "Something's wrong. We have to figure out what it is." And all of our violences began here. They began with the refusal to look, denial, repression, the desire not to know. My mother and I, we were complicit in pretending that nothing had happened. Now, when we bear witness, we break that silence. And when we do that, it can be terrifying. Our witnesses help us to turn around and face what we are afraid of. They show us that we can find the courage and the strength to bring those things we are running from into the light. And when we learn how to do that, we take our power back. We take the power of the fear that's driving us to run. Fear of what we do not want to know, do not want to be true. Fear of what will happen if we speak the truth. Fear of what will happen because we know. And when we face that fear, we are liberated, because every violence, doesn't matter if it's the child being abused, if it is the person taken from their homes in the middle of the night and brought to secret detention centers, if it is criminal oligarchs in collusion with governments stealing land and resources from the people they should be serving, every violence, big and small, begins from the failure to bear witness. But here's the beautiful thing. When we turn around and meet that fear and begin to break that silence, we start reconnecting the parts of ourselves we have been split off from. Instead of using all of our energy to run, we have that energy to reconnect ourselves, and connection is the source of our joy. And I mean this literally. This mother and her baby, right now they are bonding. And you know what that kind of connection does? It releases megadoses of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. This is the chemical formula of joy. And this chemical formula of joy, it is literally wiring that baby's brain right now to expect to be loved, cared for, nurtured, and feeling this connection, feeling this bond, expecting to be loved. She is open. This is joy, and this is what joy does. And our joy comes from our connection. Now, I shouldn't be on thank you yet, so ignore that. Now, what happens if we live in chronic states of fear and anxiety? Then the stress response system kicks in. The stress response system floods us with the chemicals and the hormones that prime the body to fight off danger or run from it. And if we can't fight or run, then we play dead until the danger passes. But what if we are living in circumstances such that we are never out of danger long enough for our stress response system to shut up? Then our brains become wired to expect danger. It doesn't matter if the danger is really out there in front of us, it's inside of us. And we project it onto everything around us. And when we do that, our capacity to experience that beautiful chemical soup of oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, the thing that lets us feel connected and loved and joy, that capacity is diminished. So, I am proposing to you, seriously, that we must intentionally, consciously cultivate our capacity for joy. Because when we are in conditions of that stress response system righting us, we do not know who is safe and how to love. And we have to heal ourselves. And here's the beautiful news. We can. What we know now is that we can learn how our stress response system is affecting us. We can learn how to turn it down. And the more we do that, the more we grow our capacity for those neurochemicals of joy to bring us into the states of pleasure and openness that can allow us to reconnect with each other. And when I started to learn this, I started to learn something else about the violences we experience. My father, before he was the man I knew, he was a child himself. He lived his own violences. One of 13 children in a poor family. He went to war in Korea and Vietnam. He was handed a gun and given an enemy, and that enemy became his definition. It became his salvation. It was the thing onto which he could project everything about himself that he hated. And with that, he got his identity as a man. And that's what he brought home to me. And when I could understand that, I could see that my life, my experience, it wasn't just about me or my father. It was about war and poverty and how violence is passed from generation to generation. And I could also see that my life, my father's life, we are just small threads in a larger cultural fabric that is torn and broken. And when we start the work of healing ourselves, and I am begging you, take up that work because we're all in need of it, and we do that with our joy. And when we start that work is something we have to do not just in and with and for ourselves. We have to bring that work into the world. We have to do it with each other. Because what I suffered, what you suffered, we are not unique. This is part of a pattern. And if we want to be well ourselves, we have to work to make the people and the world around us well. And we do that with our joy. Now, here's the other thing that I learned. That night, Denise stood as my first witness. She showed me also that the roads that we are traveling, we travel together. And the more that we can bring ourselves to our states of connectedness and joy, the more energy we have to bring that into the world around us. And that generates energy. It generates hope. And that generating of energy and generating of hope, we start mobilizing that, and we have the possibility of a radically different world in front of us. And you know what else that shows us? When I can see that my father is a man, not a monster, I have my compassion for him. And that compassion for him is a compassion I can find and bring to the world around us. And that compassion is what will allow us to heal the most violent and the most broken parts of our world. And that compassion, it helps us love ourselves. Because you know what? When we have been the victims of violence, we live with the shame of our helplessness and our humiliation. And when our witnesses help us to find compassion for ourselves and to begin to love ourselves, that grows exponentially, and we bring that to the world around us. And that is the work of healing, which begs of us consciously, intentionally cultivate our own states of joy. I want something very, very simple. I want every life on this planet to be loved, cared for, safe, and nurtured. And we have this possibility. We have the possibility to grow this in ourselves. We have the possibility to grow it with each other. And this is what can bring us into a world that we can inhabit for not just the next 5 and 10 and 15 years, but for centuries to come. And if we don't do that, we don't have centuries. And sometimes I cannot grasp how we have made up a world of money, weapons, war, violent and exploitative political systems that enslave and kill. We have made this up. These are all human inventions, and we have the possibility to make up something different. If we can learn to turn around and face the things that we are afraid of, and we liberate that energy for reconnecting ourselves, because what we have to reconnect is both within ourselves. It's what we've been running from, what we've split off, and it is between us. Because in order to understand my father as a man, not a monster, I had to reconnect to the historical fabric of his life to see how what I experienced is just one thread in this social and cultural fabric. If we do this, we have the possibility of creating a world that is based on joyful connection, hopeful love, and our creative imagination. And it is our choice. We choose. I am praying that we choose hope and joy and love.